The M1 Garand wasn't just a rifle, it was a revolution in the hands of the American soldier. For decades, wars had been fought with bolt action rifles, slow and deliberate, but the M1 changed everything. For the first time, a major army equipped its troops with a semi automatic rifle as standard issue. And that decision helped define how the United States fought and won the Second World War. The story begins in the aftermath of the First World War, a brutal conflict where bolt action rifles like the British Lee Enfield, German Mauser, and American Springfield had ruled the battlefield. But as the war ended and militaries around the world assessed the lessons learned, one thing became clear: firepower had changed. In the 1920s, the U.S. Army began searching for a replacement for the M1903 Springfield, a fine rifle, accurate and dependable, but built around the old bolt action model. They wanted something new, something faster, something modern. Enter John Garand, a Canadian born firearms designer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. Quiet, methodical, and brilliant, Garand spent years refining his design. He experimented with gas operated mechanisms, reloading systems, and materials, always chasing the same goal: a reliable, semi automatic rifle that could withstand the rigors of war. In 1936, after extensive testing and revisions, the U.S. Army adopted his rifle, the M1 Garand, a gas operated, clip fed, semi automatic rifle chambered in .30 06 Springfield. It could fire 8 rounds as fast as a soldier could pull the trigger and then eject its in block clip with a distinctive metallic ping. That sound would become one of the most iconic audio signatures of the Second World War. Weighing about 9.5 pounds loaded and just over 43 inches long, the M1 Garand offered a perfect balance of power, range, and rate of fire. Its gas operated rotating bolt allowed it to cycle rounds smoothly, even under harsh battlefield conditions. Soldiers trained with it quickly, praised its ease of use, and appreciated its reliability. By the time the United States entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the M1 was already in full production. And as American forces mobilized for war on two fronts, these in Europe and the Pacific, the Garand became their constant companion. Marines carried it ashore on Guadalcanal. Paratroopers jumped with it into Normandy. Soldiers fired it in the snow at the Battle of the Bulge and in the ruins of Berlin. General George S. Patton himself famously called the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. And in many ways, he was right. The M1 gave the average American infantryman a firepower advantage over his enemies. While German and Japanese soldiers still relied primarily on bolt action rifles, the Carabiner 98K and Arisaka Type 99, American troops could deliver a higher volume of accurate fire without losing accuracy or control. In firefights, that mattered. A squad of Garand equipped troops could lay down suppressive fire, break up enemy attacks, and advance with confidence. In close quarters, the semi automatic action gave American troops the edge, and when combined with the Browning automatic rifle, Thompson submachine gun, and M1919 machine gun, U.S. infantry units became some of the most lethal small units in the war. But the M1 wasn't perfect. The M1 Garand gave American troops a new kind of confidence in combat. In the thick of battle, and whether advancing through dense European forests or slogging through the jungles of the Pacific, the semi automatic firepower it delivered helped win countless engagements. But the rifle's real strength wasn't just on paper, it was how it performed in the mud, blood, and chaos of war. Soldiers who carried the Garand often talked about how tough it was. It worked in the freezing cold of the Ardennes. It fired after being dropped in muddy foxholes or dunked in river crossings. It kept going through sandstorms in North Africa and tropical rain in New Guinea. Maintenance was still essential. Soldiers were taught to clean the gas system, keep the bore dry, and protect the bolt. But the rifle could take a beating and still deliver. In combat, the Garand gave its users something every soldier wants: speed without sacrifice. A soldier could fire 8 rounds rapidly, with real accuracy, without removing his eye from the sights or taking his hand off the trigger. When the last round fired, the empty clip ejected upward with a now famous metallic ping, and a new clip could be slammed home in seconds. That ping became the subject of battlefield legend. Some soldiers feared the sound gave away their position or signaled they were out of ammo. Others swore it never mattered. The battlefield was too loud, the sound too brief, and the enemy too busy ducking for cover. In reality, the clip ejection sound rarely posed a tactical risk. More often, it was a signal to the soldier himself: reload fast, keep moving, stay in the fight. Reloading the Garand was simple but different. Unlike later magazine-fed rifles, the Garand used an internal magazine loaded by an en-bloc clip. You couldn't just top off the magazine with individual rounds. You had to fire all eight or manually eject the clip to insert a new one, a process that took training but became second nature to combat veterans. On the front lines, the Garand wasn't just a long-range weapon. In house-to-house fighting, from the bombed-out cities of France to the volcanic ridges of Iwo Jima, it became a short-range brawler. The 30006 cartridge packed enormous stopping power. One hit from the Garand could put a man down. Bayonets were often fixed for close quarters assaults, and many veterans recounted brutal up close encounters where the Garand's balance and length helped them thrust, strike, or parry in moments of desperation. Marines used it to clear caves and bunkers on Saipan and Okinawa. Army soldiers carried it through the hedgerows of Normandy and over the bridges of Holland. Paratroopers landed with modified versions during airborne drops. Some carried a specially modified folding stock version, though most still jumped with the standard M1 slung over their shoulder. The rifle's versatility also extended to marksmen. While the M1 wasn't originally intended as a sniper rifle, it proved accurate enough for that role. Later in the war, the M1C and M1D sniper variants were introduced, both equipped with scope mounts and leather cheek pads. Though not as precise as bolt-action sniper rifles like the Springfield M1903A4, these scoped Garands offered semi-automatic fire with good accuracy at medium range. Soldiers in the Pacific found the rifle's semi-automatic fire invaluable when facing banzai charges, fast, sudden waves of Japanese infantry attempting to close the distance and overwhelm American positions. In those moments, the ability to fire shot after shot without cycling a bolt saved lives. But the Garand was not without flaws. Some soldiers complained about the weight. Nearly 10 pounds loaded, it was heavier than the German Kar 98K. The N-block clip system, while innovative, meant that ammunition couldn't be shared as easily with other clip-fed or mag-fed weapons, and when fighting alongside British troops armed with Lee Enfield rifles, which held 10 rounds and could be topped off with stripper clips, the Garand's 8-shot limitation stood out. Still, the pros outweighed the cons. The Garand was battle-proven. It could endure, adapt, and deliver in almost any situation. For many soldiers, it was more than a rifle. It was a partner in survival. When the guns fell silent in 1945 and World War II officially ended, the M1 Garand didn't fade into history. It kept going. The rifle that helped win the greatest conflict in modern history would soon find itself in a new war, with new conditions and a new generation of soldiers. The Korean War began in 1950, just 5 years after the Allied victory in the Pacific. As communist North Korean forces invaded the South, the United States and its allies mobilized again, and once more the Garand went to war. For thousands of American troops sent to the Korean Peninsula, it was the same rifle their fathers had carried, and it proved itself all over again. In Korea, conditions were extreme. Brutal winters with temperatures plunging below zero, torrential rains, mountain warfare, trench fighting. The M1 Garand endured it all. Its closed gas system was more resistant to dirt and fouling than many feared. Soldiers kept it clean, protected the action, and trusted it when the enemy came charging over the ridge. Whether it was holding the line at the Pusan perimeter, storming up the frozen hills of the Chosan Reservoir, or pushing back waves of Chinese infantry in night assaults, the Garand gave American troops the same semi-automatic advantage it had during World War II, the same 8 rounds. The same familiar ping, the same dependable stopping power, but military technology was evolving. As the 1950s progressed, armies around the world began to shift toward selective fire rifles and detachable magazine systems. The era of the semi-automatic service rifle was coming to an end. The U.S. military began developing the M14 rifle based directly on the Garand's design, but featuring a 20-round detachable magazine and full auto capability. The M14 would replace the Garand by the early 1960s. Even so, the Garand's influence was everywhere. The M14 borrowed its gas-operated action and rotating bolt. The AR-10 and AR-15, which would evolve into the M16, were influenced by the Garand's emphasis on reliability, ergonomics, and lightweight materials. In fact, nearly every modern military rifle today owes something to the Garand, and yet the Garand itself wasn't done. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, surplus M1 rifles were shipped to America's allies across the world. Italy produced its own version, the Beretta BM-59. South Korea, Denmark, Greece, Turkey, and the Philippines received thousands of M1s. These rifles saw combat in regional conflicts, trained generations of soldiers, and served in honor guards long after their frontline careers ended. Back in the United States, the M1 Garand became a prized possession among veterans, collectors, and competitive shooters. The civilian marksmanship program, originally created to promote rifle proficiency in the early 20th century, began selling surplus Garands to qualified citizens. These rifles became heirlooms, range favorites, and centerpieces of firearm collections across the country, and for good reason. The Garand wasn't just a piece of history, it was a precision instrument, accurate out to 500 yards or more, balanced, powerful, and a joy to shoot. Enthusiasts praised its smooth recoil, clean trigger break, and mechanical rhythm. The metallic ping of the ejecting clip became more than a sound, it became a signature. Collectors seek rifles by serial number, tracing their history back to production dates in Springfield, Winchester, Harrington and Richardson, and International Harvester. Some Garands still bear battlefield scars, stock carvings, unit markings, and wear patterns from decades of service. Today, the M1 Garand lives on in museums, shooting ranges, reenactments, and ceremonies. It is still used in military funerals and honor guards. It's featured in films, documentaries, and video games. It is remembered not just for what it was, but for what it represented. For the soldiers who stormed Omaha Beach, for the Marines who raised the flag on Iwo Jima, for the GIs who marched across Europe. The Garand was their rifle, and even now, long after its last combat mission, the M1 Garand stands tall as one of the most iconic and respected firearms ever made.